slightly easy part to start with. We're going to just knit the first half of the heel stitches, and again you will be told on your pattern how many you need to knit. So it's 9 for me because I'm doing the smaller one, 11 for medium, 12 for large. And what I'm going to do, I'm knitting these and I'm going to place a marker, and that is going to indicate the beginning and the end of the round again. We've 2, 4, 6, sorry, we've done the beginning and the end of the round from here before, so again shouldn't be I can't talk and count, can I? 2, 4, 6, 8. So yeah, shouldn't be too much of a bother here. Do you know what? I'm going to take that back a bit, and I'll tell you why. I want to introduce my contrast colour, don't I? So I'm going to just do that little trick that we did before and lean or lay my contrast colour over the top of my needle and just catch it in like we did before. Do you remember? Just so that it is ready when I get to the beginning of the round. I forgot about that. Nobody shouted. You might have been shouting at the screen. 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay, 8. And do you remember now I'm going to just put it over the top from that direction, knit the stitch in, and it is now knit and held in nicely. Right, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I've now got to the centre point, which is going to become the start and end of our round, and there's my trusty stitch marker. I need to get some smaller ones of these. If you've not got stitch markers, again, I'm not sure what's going in the box yet. I know there will be stitch markers, but if you need extra ones, or if you want smaller ones, whatever, you can make them with little loops of a contrast yarn. That works really well. They're really unobtrusive and they work a treat. Okay, people, here we go. So we are now at the beginning of the round, which means we've got to bring in the chart. Okay, so don't panic. We've done charts before. This is just another chart with a couple of new symbols on, and we will be absolutely fine. And I'm saying it for myself as much as you, to be honest with you. I'm going to get back into the position that I've been working in, which is putting my contrast yarn over to my left and my main yarn over to my right. So we're all good to go. And off we go. So before we start doing anything at all, we've got a couple of sort of things to think about, because we're going to be referring to our pattern with some instructions to get going, but at the same time we've got to work from our chart. So you've got a couple of things to think about in one go. If you need to, write them out, and I've done that loads of times. I think, as I've told you before, plenty of the people in our knit groups, when I used to go to knit groups in a previous life, plenty of people there used to write out all of their patterns into their own sort of way of understanding them. So no shame in that at all. So if you need to do that, do that. Right, so we're at the beginning of the round. We've placed our marker, and we're now coming into the most complicated part of the whole pattern, according to Dr. Phil. So take it slowly and take it carefully. We've reintroduced our contrast colour, and we're working from whichever chart is relevant to us. So I've got the chart 2A here, which is the smaller one. I'm now going to knit 9 stitches in pattern, which is going to bring me to the end of the heel flap. So 9 stitches in pattern. Now here's some good news. We know this pattern, don't we? We know that we've got our 5 and our 1 going on here. Our 5 and our 1. Obviously at the beginning we have fewer stitches, but 5 and 1, we're familiar with this. This is okay, I can do this. So my starting point is 2 blue, 1 cream. And now we go on to my familiar 5 and 1, and I know I've got to stop at the end of the heel flap, so I've got a little bit of help here. I know that I haven't got to go flying off the end there, and hopefully it ends with cream. Okay, tick, have done that. Right, we're now going to pick up along the edge of the heel flap. got yarns going everywhere. Let's just tidy those out of the way. If you've not looked at the videos for the stripy socks yet, maybe have a look at those, or have a look at the gusset and the heel flap ones for those, because this is worked in exactly the same way, and it might be an idea to have a look at the technique before you worry about technique and chart. But it's not too much of a hardship, okay? I think you're going to manage it no problem at all, because we are helped out with this really nice to remember pattern that we've got going on here. So when we're picking up stitches along the heel flap, I'm just rolling out the edge to the edge stitches. So you can see there's a line of V's. If I get a DPN and go under one of the V's, there. Okay, that line of V's, those are the stitches that we're working on, okay, those very edge stitches, and by virtue of the sort of slipped stitches at the edge, they're quite easy to count and go into, and those are where we're going to be picking up. Now the only thing we've got to remember is the pattern. Sorry, I'm just trying to find a good place to start. Is the pattern, okay? But like I said, we've got our 5 and our 1. We know where we're going with that. So if you keep that in mind, you should be okay. So what I'm going to do, there's lots and lots and lots of different ways you can pick up stitches. You can choose to go under 2 legs. You can choose to go under the back leg only, or the front leg only, or anything you want. But for this one, I think I'm going to go under back loop only and give it a twist. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to use a DPN to pick up because I find that easier. I don't think I'm going to start in there. I'm going to roll out to my first heel flap edge stitch, which is that one there. Okay, can be tricky to see, but bear with and get it under a good light. This is worth doing this in daylight or under a good light. All right, so I've picked up the back loop only with my DPN, and I'm just going to knit into the back of it. Before I knit my stitch, I'm going to go back to my chart and make sure what colour I need to be working in. Well, I know I've got 5 main colour stitches coming up, so that's handy. So that's number 1. And here comes the next one. I'm just picking up the back loop and knitting into it. I find this is quite a neat way to do it. 2. Next one. Are you the next one? It's hard to see. 3. 4. Just roll those stitches out. 5. Right, now I've done 5 in main colour. You know what I've got to do? I've got to do 1 in the contrast colour, which is that one there. 6. So drops my main colour, picking my contrast colour up from underneath, knitting number 6. And I'm starting that repeat again. Rolling out the edge stitch, picking up the back. This is number 7. 8, and so on. Now you kind of know where you're going with that. Refer back to your chart and make sure that you know what's going on, because if I look here, number 9 stitch was the last stitch on the heel flap, so that was that one there, that cream stitch there, or that contrast stitch there. If I look at the rest of my stitches, my pickup stitches, which are these few here, I can see I've only got 2 contrast stitches in there, and then I've got a big long line of main colour stitches. Okay, so I've done 1 contrast stitch, so I know I'm all right until I get to this next contrast colour stitch. Okay, so let me just repeat that. This contrast colour stitch was the edge of my heel flap. All of these are going to be picked up stitches, and I've got 1, 2 cream stitches, so I can do my pattern repeat for at least 2 repeats without having to refer to my pattern at all. And it's easy to count how many stitches I've picked up, because that is a good marker at the edge of the heel flap there. That contrast stitch is a good marker, so I know I've got to count from that stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 I've picked up so far. So I'm going to just do a few more and meet you back in a minute. Okay, this is stitch number 15, and I want to stop here because if you're reading your pattern, you will note that your pattern says you've got to place a stitch marker between the penultimate 2 stitches that you pick up. So between stitches 16 and 17 for me, as I'm doing the small one, or between, what are you picking up? Between stitches 19 and 20 for mid-size and 22 and 23 for the larger size. If you look at your pattern, your chart, you'll see a red line, this red line coming down here, and that indicates the position of a stitch marker, which is brilliant because this stitch here is the 16th stitch that I will pick up, and this stitch here is the 17th stitch I will pick up, and the red line between means put a stitch marker in. Okay, so recap, 9 stitches worked across the heel here, then we've got 17 stitches picked up, which takes me to here, and the stitch marker between the 16th and the 17th, and all the way along we're working in pattern. So I've just done stitch number 15. I'm going to do stitch number 16, just level that up. I haven't got any more contrast stitches to do at the moment, so I'm just picking up in main colour number 16, and now I'm going to put on a stitch marker, and I've got some teeny tiny ones that I found, so I'm going to put one of them on, and when I get round to the main one I'm going to swap that in as well, just because they work well on the camera. There's a stitch marker there. And coming the other side of the stitch marker, this is the last stitch I'm going to pick up along that heel flap. Phew! Right then. So if you look, you can see green stitch marker is the beginning of the round. We knit 9 stitches along the heel flap in pattern, finishing on that contrast stitch there. We picked up along the edge of the heel flap, and we popped our stitch marker between the last 2 stitches. Can you see? I'm just going to double check my numbers. So if you recall, good indicator is the last contrast stitch at the edge of the heel flap. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 and 17. Fantastic. So we've picked up the heel flap stitches on this side of the heel flap. Now what we've got to do is knit all the way across the front of the sock. Now this is where we've got more chart to look at. I'm just going to cover up this part of the chart, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about why that in a minute. In fact, I'm going to cover up all the way down to just, I've got obstructions happening with yarn and all sorts. I'm going to just cover up everything except that first row. Okay, and we've got some great new anchor points, lads, because we've got some stitch markers. So if I look at my stitch marker, I know I've picked up one after the stitch marker, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main colour, 2 contrast, 2 main, and so on and so on. And I'm going to work that across all the stitches that haven't been worked when we made the heel flap. So all the remaining unworked stitches worked across in pattern following my chart.